real special when you have a chance to get up on the scoreboard and start working your depth chart a little bit. It's real important for us moving forward that our depth plays well.
The Owls were dominant in Week 3 and ended up with their largest margin of victory in the Stan Drayton era.
The Owls have their toughest matchup this week against the number 20 ranked Miami Hurricanes, who will be storming the Link this Saturday.
And I'm Sam Covone, live outside of Edberg-Olsen Hall. I'll be taking a closer look at Temple's newest standout safety and his honorary single-digit status that has gone on for 3 weeks.
And I'm Hayden Bandel at the studio set. Stay tuned to find out what happened around the American, including a crazy finish to the first conference game of the season. Inside the Nest is live and it starts right now.
Hello and welcome to Inside the Nest. I'm Gabel, she's Meg Doyle, and a hurricane from Miami is coming north. But first things first, the Owls fresh off a blowout victory against Norfolk State.
This was the first time the two schools faced off against each other, and the Owls made sure Norfolk State wouldn't forget it. The Owls were home at the Link on Saturday to take on Norfolk State, and they wasted no time getting started. Temple quarterback E.J. Warner went 3 for 5 with 64 passing yards within the first 5 minutes of the game. For the first scoring drive, Warner completes a 15-yard pass to freshman running back Joquez Smith for his first career touchdown. However, the Owls didn't stop there. With under 2 minutes left in the first quarter, quarterback Quincy Patterson with a QB sneak to extend Temple's lead. Norfolk State responds with running back Xavier Evans rushing the ball for 22 yards. This leads to a 2-yard touchdown pass for the Spartans' first points of the game. The Owls take back control with Joquez Smith's first rushing touchdown of 51 yards straight into the end zone. The Owls weren't finished for the half yet. Warner's accuracy was on point this game and throws 24 yards to Dante Wright. Darvon Hubbard is next to score with a 21-yard rushing touchdown. The Owls finished off the half with a 28-7 lead over Norfolk State.
On to the second half. After a Camden Price field goal, the Owls now lead 31-7. A pass to Ahmad Anderson for 9 of his 79 receiving yards set the Owls up at the goal line. Quincy Patterson back in at quarterback, fakes the handoff, spin move, and dives into the end zone for the touchdown. 38-7 now. Fourth quarter, Patterson in the end zone but heading the other way. A holding penalty called in the end zone makes it a safety for Norfolk State. They now trail Temple 38-9. Later in the fourth quarter, E.J. Wilson getting the handoff and ends up with a 20-yard gain. Camden Price with the busy game kicking hits the 36-yarder. That does it. Temple wins big, 41-9, the Owls' largest margin of victory in 2 years. It was all Temple all game long, outscoring the Spartans in all 4 quarters. E.J. Warner cut his passing attempts in half from last week, yet still ended up with more passing yards this week against Norfolk State than against Rutgers. Joquez Smith had himself a day with 142 rushing yards and his first ever collegiate touchdown. Ahmad Anderson led the receivers with 5 catches for 79 yards. For the Spartans, Otto Coons threw his lone touchdown to Aaron Moore, along with 110 passing yards, while Xavier Evans had 59 yards on the ground. Overall, it was Temple's most complete game of the year.
After the big win, some Owls had a lot to say about their stellar performance.
Quarterback E.J. Warner, linebacker Jordan McGee, and running back Joquez Smith spoke after the Owls' W.
Yeah, it's huge. I think our run game's super important. Today they were killing it. So, I mean, I'm happy if we keep getting yards to just stand back there, hand the ball off, and watch them go. And that's what happened for most of the game today. So I'll take that any day of the week when we get a good run game. Yeah, it was big. I mean, they played great today. Even on the first touchdown, I mean, I was standing back there, had a lot of time. So it's just huge takes some weight off the shoulders that you know that you can stand back there, and they're working hard to protect me every single play. So excited for those guys. Hopefully we can stay healthy and continue that going.
Just focus on ourselves. You know, we try not to let that be our mindset. You know, we try not to play down to our opponent. We know we're the only team that can beat ourselves, so we just try to go out there and give 110% effort all the time. Yeah, that's what we preach. Next man up mentality. You know, Jacob is a smart guy, so he's able to play Jack, Sam, and inside linebacker. So you know, just being that versatile and being that playmaker that he is, he's able to come in at different positions and play how he plays.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much from the beginning, they've been telling me to be ready. So once my number got called, I was ready. Yeah, just trusting the process, trusting my reads, letting everything go slow, picking up the linebackers, seeing where they're moving, just doing what I got to do. Pretty much, we just wanted to show Coach that we could run the ball. The whole thing since week 1 is run the ball. We got to be able to run the ball to win games. So today we wanted to show everybody we could run the ball.
And run the ball they did. I know me and Meg have been harping on the Owls to try to get that running game going, and Joquez Smith put the team on his back in that department with 142 rushing yards. He was the first freshman to get 100-plus rushing yards since 2019. He's also the first player since 2019 to have both a rushing and receiving touchdown in the same game since Ramon Davis did it.
He was certainly a star in that game, but also the offense as a whole. They had their best rush performance so far. I mean, 41 carries for 290 yards and 4 touchdowns. Prior to this game, the Owls had 129 rushing yards for the season. Now, they doubled that in just one game. Now, I have to mention, EJ had a fantastic game, and the stats go to prove that. Not only that, but he is now number 9 on Temple's all-time pass list with 3,788 yards. Now, Jake, Stan has talked about EJ time and time and again. Even when he doesn't have his best game, he's a good player and he's dedicated to the sport. And this is so well-deserved for EJ.
Yeah, I mean, well-deserved for EJ indeed. And he's just a sophomore, already 9th on that all-time list. The offense as a whole was doing great, and that led to no punts for the entire game. Punter Dante Atten didn't have to do anything except catch the snap and hold it down for Camden Price on those kicks. That's the first time they haven't had a punt in a game since Week 10 of last season against Houston. Now onto the defense, someone I want to highlight is DeJuan Black. He had himself a breakout game. He had 3 tackles for loss. He was disruptive all game, and like you see right there, he just had a sack. So he was disruptive along with the entire defense, only allowing those 9 points.
One other person I want to highlight is DJ Woodbury. He led the Owls with 8 total tackles. Now, if you think back, Game 1, he had 0 tackles. He went from 0 to 8 in just a few weeks. That shows that upward trend of progression for him. And the defense as a whole. In this game, the defense held Norfolk State to only 240 offensive yards compared to Temple's 532 yards. I mean, that goes to show how much they've progressed.
Yeah, that defense is going to have to step up big if they want to get that win against Miami coming up. But as always, we had a large crew at the link Saturday. So let's toss it over to Inside the Nest beat reporter Sam Covone, who was at the game. And she's talking single digits. Hey, Sam, tell us more.
Thanks, guys. The single digit has been a tradition in Temple football history for almost 15 years. This year, Coach Stan Drayton has implemented 2 honorary single digits each week that are announced the Thursday before the game. And 1 new player has been on the single digit list each and every week.
Coming into week 3 of the season, the Owls badly needed a win, and that's where single digit players come into play. Tywan Francis has been the guy to step up since arriving on North Broad this summer. In week 1, he was awarded a single digit, number 4, and he hasn't given it up.
Just prepare, clear-headed, go out there trying to execute the job, and at the end of the week I find out. So
the single digit is the highest honor a Temple football player can earn. After his breakout game against Akron in week 1, Francis has continued to get better.
For the 3rd consecutive week, Tywan Francis has proved that he is Temple tough. This is the third week in a row that Francis has been awarded a single digit and has been one of the team's leaders in tackles. This week against Norfolk State, he had 7 total tackles, 5 of them being solo.
I feel like it keep me on my toes, keep me performing at a high level. So if that's how Coach Dreen wanted it, so be it.
This single digit has been paying off, as Francis, who was part of a defense that only gave up 240 total yards versus Norfolk State, compared to almost 500 yards a week before against Rutgers.
This week was all about just doing your job. Don't try to do anything extra. Don't spin out of your gaps. Don't just trust it.
As Temple looks towards its matchup against Miami this Saturday, the Owls will need big plays out of Taiwan Francis, who could potentially be wearing number 4 for the 4th straight week.
This Temple defense will need an even better effort this Saturday against a strong Miami team that is averaging 45 points per game. That's all I have for now. Reporting live from Edberg-Olsen Hall, I'm Sam Covone. Meg and Jake, back to you.
Thanks, Sam. I wish we had time to rewatch the whole game, but we'll settle for picking our 2 favorite plays from this blowout game against Norfolk State.
It's time for our snapshot. We'll each take a deep dive into a play from last week. Meg, get us started.
All right, my pick is Quincy Patterson's no-huddle QB sneak 1-yard touchdown. We're going to watch it back one more time. Pause it here. You see the power from that offensive line. The tush push, as Stan Drayton would call it. They push him over that end zone. Go ahead and play it. Now, Stan said they took this right out of the Eagles' playbook, and it definitely worked in their favor.
Definitely. Stop it right here for my play. You're going to see some pressure from both DeJuan Black, who's attacking that left tackle, and then right here you have Trey Thomas attacking the right tackle. They're going to completely collapse the pocket and give quarterback Otto Kuhns nowhere to go. You can play it again and watch as he has absolutely no space to go to and gets sacked by DeJuan Black. Watch it again. Watch those interior defensive linemen too. They're just pushing straight up into him, not letting him go anywhere.
All right, we're now approaching our first break of the day. On the other side, we'll hear from head coach Stan Drayton at his weekly press conference.
Drayton will discuss a little more on the Owls' win last weekend, and we'll start to cover their upcoming matchup against 20th ranked Miami. Stick around, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Inside the Nest. Every Monday, Stan Drayton gets the questions, and every Monday morning, we get the answers. It's his weekly news conference.
As always, we've got 2 parts. In our first part, Coach Drayton talks E.J. Warner, Joquez Smith, and the challenges that Temple's defense will have with the Hurricanes.
Just made plays. You know, he was productive, didn't make a whole lot of mistakes, and, you know, took advantage of what the offensive line presented. And also, you know, got yards on his own, you know, was able to play on contact and protect the football. You know, those are the things that we ask of that position. Yeah, anytime that, you know, we have things clicking, you know, for him, and he feels protected, and you get the run game, taking the pressure off of him, you know, having to make so many plays on his own, promotes confidence, you know. But I never thought at any given point that he lost confidence, you know, when things weren't not going so well for him. You know, he's a steady Eddie, you know, and pretty much handles adversity the same way every day, you know. So I never felt that there was a lack of confidence, but it's always good when you can take the pressure off off of him in the run game, and him feel protected and trust the line up front, and receivers making plays downfield. It's got to be good for any quarterback in that respect. No, well, you know, they're playing into their strengths. I mean, they definitely have a big-time quarterback. He's big. They have they're big up front. They protect him well. He throws the ball with timing. The running back's the real deal. He can hit a home run at any given point in time, so you just can't be locked into the throw game. You have to be, you know, just disciplined with your eyes and be ready to anticipate anything that can come out of that offensive unit that Miami has. So comparing them to another team is kind of hard. I mean, they have an element of speed that we have not seen, you know, and they got some playmakers on the perimeter. So we just got to lock in and do the best that we can to, you know, continue to enhance our execution on defense. Quincy's awesome. I hadn't seen him be but one way, and that's awesome. You know, he's a teammate, very unselfish, and, you know, we recruited him that way, and he's been that way. So he's settling into his role. He just wants to win, and that's what we need for guys that are playing in roles like that.
That was part one of Stan Drayton's weekly press conference. And now it's time for me and Meg to react.
All right, I'll get us started. The first thing I want to acknowledge is how Stan said that Joquez Smith took advantage of what the offensive line presented him, and that he certainly did. With 142 rushing yards, he ran the ball. Jake, we've been saying time and time again, Temple needs to run the ball, and Joquez Smith, he proved himself out there on the field. And not only that, but he ran the ball for more than we could have expected. Now, switching shifts, Stan also said that the defense can't be locked into the throw game. Now, Miami is fast. The defense needs to keep up with them. In Miami's most recent game, they had 240 rushing yards against Bethune-Cookman. Now, that's a lot, and Temple defense has shown a lot of progression, but they just need to keep progressing with it. The final thing I want to say for this part is I need to acknowledge his love for Quincy Patterson. He truly is such an unselfish human, and he is a great teammate on and off the field, and I love that Stan makes a point to point that out in press conferences.
Yeah, I got to agree with the Quincy Patterson part. He's a great guy, and he's funny, too. In the press conference, he said he loves watching EJ go down the field, make the big throws, and then he gets to just come in and then steal his touchdowns on the 1-yard line. Just love the dynamic between the two quarterbacks because they're working together, and normally that room is a big competition room. And then going more on EJ, I love Stan's faith in him because two games ago against Rutgers, he did not have the best performance, throwing for about 42% completion percentage, had 2 interceptions. It wasn't his best performance, maybe one of his worst of his career, but then he followed it up with a great performance this week against Norfolk State, and I think that just shows that Stan never wavered in his faith at all. EJ's confidence never wavered either, and that he's just the real deal being that sophomore guy. And then last point I want to make, the defense. They have a tough task against Miami. Well, Miami's defense is going to be a tough task for Temple's offense. They are 22nd in the nation in pass yards allowed per game, and they are going to be a lot to handle for this Temple offense.
Temple definitely has their work cut out for them. But now, part 2 of Stan Drayton's weekly news conference. Drayton starts off talking about taking a play from the Eagles playbook and also about his reserves, who got some good reps this past weekend.
Plays like that.
Well, number one, you got to get lined up in a hurry, right? And, it's low man wins, and when you got 900,000 pounds coming at you, it is pretty tough to stop if you can't get underneath people, and then you got a 240-pound quarterback that can push the pile, and you got a little peep-squeak, little running backs back there pushing on your tush. It is a tough play to stop. I'm not going to lie to you, we stole it right from the Eagle playbook. I'm sitting there looking at this play for the last 2 years, like the success rate is ridiculous, so I'll be a fool not to at least give it a shot.
Their film set to you?
Yeah, they made some mistakes, but they also made some plays. Sit there and the one thing I do know between those two guys is they're not going to loaf. They're going to give you great effort. They're going to hustle around. All of our guys make mistakes from here, from time to time, and they made their fair share. But it's great to get those guys those game reps so that they can just settle in and start to get a great feel for the system and what's being asked of them within the system, and to be able to put that on film and actually have that confirmed on the game, and it's motivation for those guys, so they built some confidence off of last game, and we're going to need them. We're going to need all those guys as we start to approach conference play. Well, those guys have earned it, number one, right? They've earned that right, and we get pretty young behind them, and those guys just need to continue to develop to get themselves game ready. It's not like we're not afraid to put them in the ball game, but everything's earned here, and those guys still have some work to do. We actually need them to elevate their level of play so we can get more of those guys on the football field. But the guys are getting what they deserve right now.
Is Dwan in the mix?
And that was part 2 of Drayton's presser. I'm going to hop right into the Hurts play, the play that the Philadelphia Eagles have been doing for so long, and it seems that only teams that play in Lincoln Financial Field can get it down because they got it down and it worked both times they used it last game. Imitation is the biggest form of flattery here, and Stan Drayton mentioned the conversion rate. The Eagles converted on 90% of their QB sneaks last year. That's a record right there, and Temple's trying to emulate it. Now on to the defense. There was no Yvonne Rigby last week, and he entered this game leading the team in tackles. He didn't play a Norfolk State matchup, so in his place were Corey Yeoman and DJ Woodbury, and Woodbury stepped up big time as well as Yeoman. DJ Woodbury led the team in tackles with 8.
Yeah, they definitely had an impressive performance. Now, one thing I want to talk about is the depth in the receiving room. It would be nice, and Stan mentioned this, especially with the loss of Ian Stewart for at least 6 weeks. Jake, after our show last week, he took to social media to say that he will be out for at least 6 weeks. And, you know, I was really looking forward to see him play, but I'm also looking forward to see other players step up because they have big shoes to fill for this. Now, not only that, but I love how Stan ended the conference with talking about the work still needs to be done. I love that they can come off a great win, amazing performance, but recognize that this is just the beginning. This is how they should be performing every game, and they have a long way to go, especially with this tough matchup against Miami on Saturday.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough matchup, and best of wishes to Ian Stewart on his injury recovery. But we're now up against another break. When we come back, we'll take our first real look at the nationally ranked Hurricanes.
And we'll run down our blueprint for success. Inside the Nest, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back.
Our beat reporter Sam Covone is still live at Edberg Olsen and was there for player press conferences.
Thanks, guys. Alan Hay spoke at today's player press conferences. The former Miami Hurricane spoke about the upcoming game against a strong team like Miami. And here's what he had to say.
Heading into Saturday?
Yeah, it's a couple things. It's not really nothing like major, but I done seen a lot of those guys, and I done practiced against them for a long time. So I know a couple of like tendencies they have, or a couple of like just the way they coach, because they all kind of have similar tendencies because they're so disciplined and they do the things that they're coached. So the same things that the left guard gonna have, the right guard gonna have, like, because they all coach to do the same thing. So I can't lie. So it's like, yes, I get a lot of, oh, y'all play Miami this year, and a lot of, oh, your old team. Like, I get a lot of that. So it's like, it's kind of hard not to think about it, even though I have other games I got to worry about. But at the same time, I do got to take it one game at a time and play these guys like I would play any other team. I found out on my visit here at Temple, on my official visit, they said, oh, they asked me what school I came from. I told them I came from Miami. They was like, we play them next year. And I was like, okay, bet. Like, it was kind of exciting to hear that. So when I was at Miami, the whole thing that they was on was the trenches. The trenches was going to win us football games. So in order for us to compete against, like, good football teams, and not just Miami, just good football teams in general, the trenches got to step up. So O-line, D-line, well, D-line this game because they're O-line, and every game we play from this point on is going to have to be the same thing. The trenches got to be able to do what they got to do so that our little guys can have fun and fly around and make plays.
And just what?
Although Hay mentioned the left and right guards having similar tendencies, he did not hesitate to reiterate that Temple needs to come into this matchup prepared. They need to watch all the film that they can, and they also need to not treat Miami like a ranked opponent. Hay mentioned that if Temple treats Miami like they are ranked, then that's how they will play. This will ultimately be a game changer if they play like they are just another regular team. Having someone like Hay on the team will give the Owls better insight into this Miami O-line and D-line, but will it pay off on Saturday? Meg and Jake, back to you on the desk.
Thanks, Sam. I guess time will tell. But now, with Norfolk State in the rear view, it's time to take a look ahead to Temple's Week 4 matchup of the Miami Hurricanes.
Ranked at 20th, Miami will be the first ranked opponent Temple takes on this season. The game will be at home in the Link and will be nationally televised on ESPN2. Kickoff is at 3:30.
All right, it's now time to roll the tape and watch some film from the Hurricanes taking on Bethune-Cookman. Wide receiver Xavier Restrepo was unstoppable, snagging 6 passes for 120 yards against the Wildcats. Miami's quarterback Tyler Van Dyke is skilled in both the rushing and passing ends as he is on his way to making history with 419 career completions, passing former Heisman Trophy winner Vinny Testaverde for 10th on Miami's all-time list. The Hurricanes cleaned up against Bethune-Cookman on Thursday, defeating them 48-7. Miami's quarterback Tyler Van Dyke completed 19 of 23 passes for 247 yards and 2 touchdowns. Running back Don Chaney rushed for 73 yards on only 7 carries. Wide receiver Xavier Restrepo had his second straight 100-yard receiving game. On the flip side, Bethune-Cookman's quarterback Walter Simmons completed 3 out of 5 passes for 62 passing yards and 21 rushing yards in the lopsided loss.
Two teams matching up on national television coming off of blowout victories. Now it's time to hop into our game discussion. All right, Meg, what are we thinking for this game?
I mean, needless to say, it's going to be a tough matchup for the Owls. Miami has scored at least 30 points in the past 3 games. That means at least 30 points in every single game. Now, on the offensive side, they have a strong offense. 589 yards and 32 first downs, along with 7 touchdowns in their most recent matchup. Miami outgained the Wildcats 415 yards to 36 in the first 30 minutes. The Owls are going to need to get off to an early start if they want a chance against Miami. They have a history of sometimes being a little rocky in the first half, but there is no time for this here. They need to come out of that locker room ready to play and locked in.
Yeah, and the leader of that offense is quarterback Tyler Van Dyke. He is having himself quite the season so far, 7th in completion percentage among eligible QBs at 76%. That's more than 3/4 of his passes getting caught. He also has 8 touchdowns with just 1 interception and 822 yards. All of the passing statistics you can think of, he's top 30 in the country in all of them. He's been having himself a great year, and so have his wide receivers. Jacoby George, he's tied 6th in the nation with 4 receiving touchdowns, 3 of them coming against Texas A&M. Miami also has 3 players with 200-plus receiving yards. You have Xavier Restrepo, George, like I just mentioned, and Colby Young. Temple has no receivers with over 200 yards.
I know, that is a huge difference. Now, switching to the Miami defense, they held the Wildcats to only 8 first downs, 33 rushing yards, and 132 passing yards. I mean, those stats are crazy. Temple is going to need to focus on both the run and the pass game. Miami defense is so strong, and Temple has to live up to that. They can't just favor the passing over the run game. But we just saw in their last game, Temple can run the ball. So they need to utilize those skills and perform well once again.
Yeah, running the ball is going to be a tough task, though, because that Miami defense is 7th in the nation in fewest rushing yards allowed per game. They're also top 25 in fewest points allowed per game and fewest total yards allowed per game. So it's going to be a tough one for that Owls offense.
It sure is. And let's take a look. The last time the Owls played Miami, get this, Jake, 1930. Almost a century ago, they beat the Hurricanes 34-0 at Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City. I mean, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I mean, a game at Atlantic City almost 100 years ago.
It is. All right, from our game discussion to our blueprint for Temple in this upcoming game against the Canes.
All right, 2-1. Convert in the red zone. The Owls so far this season have been bottom 10 in the country in red zone conversion percentage at about 64%. Meanwhile, Miami is the 7th best red zone defense in the country, allowing opponents to score in the red zone at just 60%. It's a Temple weakness and a Miami strength, and any red zone trips where the Owls do not come away with points could kill their chances. Tool 2, prevent long kickoff returns, another Miami strength. Its kickoff unit is 6th best in the country. The Hurricanes are averaging 33.5 yards per kickoff. That number is highlighted by a 98-yard kickoff return touchdown by Rashad Smith against Texas A&M. Special teams is an overlooked facet of football and could be the difference maker in this one.
Tool number 3, stick to the basics. Miami is a physical team, especially on the offensive end. The Hurricanes have rushed for at least 200 yards in every game so far, and in the last 2, they got over 300. They're running the ball consistently, which is something Temple has yet to do. Stan mentioned in the press conference that Temple is going to need to go back to the fundamentals of football and focus on that. And our final tool for today, Temple needs to get off to a fast start. In Miami's most recent game against Bethune-Cookman, the Canes outgained the Wildcats 415 yards in just the first 30 minutes. In 2 out of Miami's 3 games, they have scored a touchdown in their first possession of the game. Temple needs to stay locked in from the time of kickoff if they want a chance at this one.
Looking at our score prediction records, everyone has been in sync to start the season. Last week, Hayden came closest to the final score, predicting a 38-10 Temple victory. He was just a few points off on both sides, with the real final score being 41-9. We've all picked the same team to win each week so far. Let's see if that changes this week.
It's time for the ITN crew to share our Week 4 predictions on this Miami-Temple matchup.
Let's send it over to the studio set to hear from Hayden Bandel. Hey, Hayden.
Thanks, Jake. You just mentioned it, and I won't pat myself on the back much more, but I did have the closest score, only being 4 points shy of the correct score in Temple's win over Norfolk State on Saturday. This week, I'm expecting the Hurricanes to storm through Lincoln Financial Field, coming away with a 38-14 victory. It is the first road game of the season for Miami, but as the 20th ranked team in the nation, they'll bring the most physical secondary that Temple has been presented with all season. On offense, they do a great job of blocking the quarterback. We heard Alan Hay talk about that, so the defensive line is going to have to step up. And I personally do not see that happening, which is why I have Temple on top. Sam, you were also pretty close in your score prediction last week. What do you think is going to happen on Saturday against Miami?
Thanks, Hayden. I do not see Temple beating Miami. In fact, I have Miami beating Temple 42-17. Although Temple is coming off a huge blowout win and they have the home field advantage, I do not think Temple is quite ready to compete with a nationally ranked team. Temple really needs to establish their run game and get to the quarterback more frequently, but that will be a tall task ahead of this weekend. With that being said, I still believe Temple will be able to get a few touchdown and field goals against the Hurricanes. Now tossing it back over to our anchors, Meg and Jake, what are your thoughts on this upcoming match against Miami?
It's an odd feeling watching Temple dominate like they did last week and still picking them to lose, but Miami is just such a tough matchup. I'm going with a 37-13 victory for the U. Miami has won all of its games so far by at least 15, and one of those was against a ranked Texas A&M team. They ranked near the top of the country in nearly every single statistic. The only thing favoring Temple on paper for this matchup is that Miami has played all 3 of its games at home so far, and this will be the first time they have played on the road.
Once again, I'm going to have to agree with everyone's pick on Temple losing to the number 20 ranked Miami Hurricanes. I have Miami taking the win 44-13. The Owls showed improvement and progress against Norfolk State, especially in the run game, but I haven't seen it consistently enough to feel confident that the Owls will perform well enough in such a tough matchup. We have another break on our hands, but coming up, it will be time to go no huddle.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back in just 90 seconds.
Welcome back. We've spent plenty of time talking about Temple football today, so it's time to take a look how the rest of the AAC is performing.
Let's send it on over to Hayden Bandel live at the studio set for the Week 3 recap.
Thanks, Jake. Let's start with the first conference matchup of the 2023 season, Navy at Memphis, and it was a good one coming down to the final play of the game. You see it right here, 4th and 6, and Navy is just inches shy of a first down as Ty Lavatai finds Jaden Umberger, but he is just short of the first down. Memphis wins 28-24. 19th ranked Oklahoma dismantled Tulsa on the road 66-7. Golden Hurricane opponents have now scored a touchdown in 8 consecutive quarters. This marks the second time in 5 years teams have done that against Tulsa. Then there's Army, a possible future AAC team. The Black Knights topped UTSA 37-29 on the road. For ECU, even a quarterback change couldn't stop the Pirates from going 3-0 on the season as it fell to Appalachian State 43-28. Tulane, North Texas, SMU, and Rice all came out of Week 3 with a win, while Charlotte, UAB, and FAU all lost. Now, there is one game that I have yet to mention thus far. That is the South Florida-Alabama game. Alabama came into the week as the 10th-ranked team in the nation. But this is college football, and the way you win matters. Although Alabama did come out with a 17-3 win against the Bulls, it was not pretty. After punting on their first 5 possessions, they switched quarterbacks. And against the team that had 1 win all of last year, along with the brand new head coach, the game was still tied at 3 at the half. Even in the win, Alabama dropped 3 spots in the AP rankings. On Monday, they also held a players-only meeting, and head coach Nick Saban announced that he would be going back to his Week 1 starter at quarterback. Now, that is all the time that I have for this updating on the scores.
We are going to take our final break for the day, and we come back, Hayden will be joining us on desk. Stick around.
Welcome back. Someone was a little bit too eager to get on the desk last time, but now they're here to stay.
Thanks for joining us, Hayden.
Yes, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to actually be on now.
Let's get started with our questions, though. So out of all the teams in the American Conference, who do you think is going to be the toughest matchup for Temple this season?
Well, Jake, I'm going to have to go with a first-year team of the American, UTSA. They won the CUSA the last 2 seasons when they were in the conference before they came to the American. Frank Harris started 36 games before last week against Army. He came out with an injury. So Eddie Lee Marburger made his first start in the loss to Army. Jeff Traylor, who is the head coach of the Roadrunners, hinted at Harris coming back for their very first American Athletic Conference game, which would be against Temple. He said that coming into the week, they can be 1-3 because this is a team that's playing number 23 Tennessee on the road next week. They can start 1-3, then they have their bye week, and then they come to Lincoln Financial Field. They're going to be pissed off with a bad record coming in here. I think that's going to be a tough task for Temple.
All right, our next question. What is a must-win conference game for Temple?
I'm going to have to go with South Florida. This is a team that Temple beat last year. The Bulls have not had the best record over the past few years. Just 5 wins in the last 3 years. 1 win against an FBS opponent. That was against the Owls. And after the Temple Owls beat South Florida last year, head coach Jeff Scott ended up getting released from his job. Alex Golish, who is now the head coach, he's been in coaching his last 20 years, but this is just his first head coaching gig. I think Stan Drayton and his squad will be ready to go for South Florida. That's going to be a must-win game.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the desk, Hayden.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that is all the time we have for this week's episode. Next week, we're going to recap that Miami game and preview Temple's first conference game of the season.
For all of us in TV3, our 2 show producers, Chloe Gessing and Jacob Spendley, along with the entire crew, have a safe day. We will see you next Tuesday at noon.